So what do you get when you combine flour, eggs, milk, hot sauce, and chicken? You get the Quarantine Pantry Raid Challenge. Are you ready to cook? I know I am. Let's get started. So this collab was created by Kat from Perfectly Cat and myself, Lena, from Paper, Scissors, and Vacations Oh My, and there are a lot of other channels participating. We are so excited about that. Make sure and check the description below for links to all the channels. I know that I'm going to be so hungry at the end of this. I don't even know what I'm going to do, but I know that I'm going to have some fantastic recipes to try. Now, the Pantry Raid collab uses the following rules. Okay, so our hands are washed and we're getting ready to start. So the first thing that I did was I got out my chicken breast strips from the refrigerator. These are just Best Choice 100% natural boneless chicken tender breast tenderloins. I drained them out of the bag and I have placed them in just a simple Glad Ziploc container. You can put this in a bowl. You can put this in any type of container that you choose. I am just use this because like everyone else, I think like Tupperware lids grow legs and run away. I knew where a lid was for this particular container. So the recipe states that we are going to take and add the hot sauce and buttermilk in the small bowl and only using half of it. But I am going to go ahead and use the full amount of both the buttermilk, which is 1/2 cup, and 1/3 of Louisiana style hot sauce to marinate my chicken breast tenders, just because of the sheer amount that I have. I do have a brand new set of measuring cups and spoons that I bought. So mine were getting a little old and getting a little funky, because as we all know, plastic sometimes can start retaining smells. So in the interest of just wanting new measuring cups too, I just got a new set of measuring cups. So we're going to start out with 1/2 cup of buttermilk. So here's my, crash! Here is my 1/2 cup. Here's my 1/2 cup measuring cup. And here is my buttermilk. So we're going to just open this up. Measure out our 1/2 cup of buttermilk. Buttermilk is a thicker milk than typical milk, which is why I think it works better for marinades. If you do not have buttermilk, you can use regular milk and vinegar. And I will put that conversion in the link below. So we have got our buttermilk in. Now it calls for 1/3 of a cup of hot sauce. I am going to use a mix of Texas Pete hot sauce and Louisiana style hotter, just because I want the flavors to be rich. I'm going to use both. So start out with my Louisiana style hotter sauce. We're going to simply shake it in there because it is a hot sauce bottle. It does have a cap. The cap does not come off. We're just going to shake, 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 shake until we get the amount that we want. All right. I think that's going to be good for the hotter sauce. And then I will top it off with the Texas Pete. And guys, you cannot smell it, but it is like this hotter one is actually stinging my eyes. And you know what? I'm going to take off the lid of the Texas Pete because I can, unlike the Louisiana. All right. Fill that up. And I'm just gonna pour that in my chicken. Make sure and get all that hot sauce out of there. Put the cap back on my hot sauce because knowing me, I'll dump it everywhere. And I'm grabbing just a spoon and I'm going to mix this around. Now you can choose to put your hot sauce and milk in first before adding your chicken, or you can do it the way I did. Either one is acceptable. Okay, so now that this is all mixed and it's all covered, and you can see why I went ahead and chose to use the full amount. It is barely covering my chicken. And I want to make sure that it all has the same opportunity to marinate. And if I had halved this, it would not be covering my chicken well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cover this with my lid, put it in the refrigerator for 30 minutes. And when 30 minutes is up, we will start breading chicken. So while we are waiting on our chicken to marinate, we're going to go ahead and get our breading station set up so that when the chicken comes out, all we have to do is bread it, put it on the pan, and start it baking. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make another milk mixture, just like we did before, only we don't have to make quite as much. So I'm going to use I'm going to use my half cup measuring cup again, but I'm only going to fill it roughly about halfway. Maybe a little more, just depends. I'll go ahead and dump that straight into our liquid station. And then for our hot sauce portion, I will be using the hotter hot sauce and none of the Texas Pete. So we're going to roughly do half of a third cup. You can really just eyeball this in your measuring cup, or you can just kind of eyeball it into your wet station if this is the way you were choosing to do it. If you actually go by the recipe down below where you mix it and then half it, this portion will already be done. So the last part of the liquid breading station is our eggs. So the recipe calls for 3 eggs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crack them into this dish, whip them all up together, make sure there's no shells, because as we all know, even the best chef makes it hard to not get any shells in their eggs. So I'm going to crack them, mix them up, make sure I don't have any shells, and then add them to my buttermilk and hot sauce mixture. Okay, so now that our eggs are mixed up together, we're going to combine them in with our buttermilk and hot sauce mixture and finish combining that together. And this will be our wet portion of our breading station. Now, if you like it a little spicier, if you want it less spicy, you can always change up the amount of hot sauce. This is a specific recipe for the copycat recipe for the spicy Popeyes chicken, which Sam and I both really like. And the closest Popeyes to us is an hour. And so I was like, you know what? For this pantry raid challenge, this is the perfect recipe. And as you can see, it is nice and red. It's got that good hot sauce look to it. But you know what? I think I'm going to add, just personally, I'm going to add just a little bit more hot sauce. Ta-da! Okay, so I'll finish mixing that up. Just a little bit more. And as this sets, it will probably kind of separate a little bit. So before I actually use my wet station, I will probably need to mix it all up once again. Okay, so that's done. I'll put the lid on that. And then we will start in on our dry breading station. Okay. That is done. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to do the dry station for our breading station. So I'm going to use another deeper bowl like we use for our chicken. So the dry breading station consists of flour, and I will be using Bob's Red Mill gluten-free 1-to-1 baking flour. I do have a gluten sensitivity. I am not celiac, but I do find that when I'm doing something with a lot of flour, similar to baking, that it does help if I use a gluten-free flour. So I need 2/3 of a cup of flour. Because I am doing more chicken than I think the recipe actually calls for, I am going to use a full 1 cup of flour. All right, so I'm just going to dip my measuring cup into my bag of flour. There we go. Here's my 1 cup of flour, and put it right into my dish. Then the next thing that it calls for is chipotle, smoked paprika, and salt. So I am going to be using a pure Himalayan pink salt. I actually picked this up at TJ Maxx for like $1.50, and I really like it. So I'm just going to simply give a few turns of the salt shaker. That is plenty. And then it calls for 2 teaspoons of paprika and 1 teaspoon of chipotle chili powder. So this is where I'm going to change up things just a little bit. Instead of 2 teaspoons of paprika, I am actually going to only use 1. And where did my paprika go? Okay, so here we have our paprika. I'm simply just going to add 1 teaspoon. It is a brand new container, so I've got to take that fresh seal off. All right, here we go. 1 teaspoon of paprika. A teaspoon. Now, here's where I'm deviating a little bit more from the recipe. In Wichita, which is about an hour from where Sam and I live, there is a store called the Spice Merchant. And they have a ton of fantastic seasonings and spices and teas and coffees. And Sam and I shop there a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of the spices from there to spice up our chicken. So I will be using 1/2 teaspoon of this pure habanero powder. It is extremely hot. Do not touch your eyes if you are using pure habanero powder. Make sure to wash your hands as quickly as possible. Otherwise you will live to regret it. It is very, very hot. So here's 1/2 teaspoon of the pure habanero powder. And then, as you can hear, I'm choking a little bit. Then I'm going to use 1/2 teaspoon of crushed Alpo pepper. It says it adds a Mediterranean flavor with a kick of spice. So I'm going to use 1/2 teaspoon of that. And remember, this is going to be the breading portion. So here's that 1/2 teaspoon. And you may be going, well, Lena, why did you find a recipe if you're just deviating from it so much? Because I needed to know what the wet breading mix was. I wasn't quite sure if they used regular milk or buttermilk. So I had to find that portion of the recipe. And then instead of chipotle chili powder, I will be using 1 teaspoon of sriracha chili powder. Now, as you can tell, I've really toned down the amounts of some of these spices simply because fresh spices are a lot more potent. And as you can tell, they will make you sneeze and cough. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to simply grab a fork and whisk it all together. You can't smell this and you can't see me at the moment, but my eyes are running simply from the seasonings. This is going to be an awesome batch of baked fried chicken. Okay, so our breading station and of both our dry and wet are both done. So it looks like we've got about another 20 minutes to wait on our chicken, and we'll be back to start breading our marinated chicken. 1 hour later, ... All right, so it's been actually about an hour, and so we are getting ready to go bread our chicken. Now, I have on hand, because I use them very sparingly, and I don't have that many because I've had these for years. I do have a pair of gloves to use for breading, just because I have them left over from when Sam was doing chemo several years ago, and they were just in a box in the kitchen. So let's go grab our chicken out of the refrigerator and get to breading. Okay, so we're back in the kitchen and we're getting started. As you can see, I have covered a pan with aluminum foil so that I can just clean up the pan by throwing the foil away after we are all done. As you can probably hear, I am putting on my gloves to get ready to bread my chicken. Here is my breading station. So, over on to the right, or your left, it is my flour and spice mixture. And this large container here is my marinated chicken. And here is my egg and milk wash. So, the recipe says, according to what we have been using, that we are going to drain the chicken, but I'm just going to leave it in the buttermilk mixture and pull it out as I go. So we're going to take 1 chicken tenderloin. You guys, it is spicy. You can smell it. Okay. So I'm going to dip my chicken into the flour. Make sure it's good and coated here. If you need to, you can massage it a little bit, coat it, cover it. Okay. Then it says we're going to dip it into the egg mixture. Front, back, and then it goes back into the flour mixture. Okay. And then it says repeat with all chicken. So we're going to finish breading up chicken, and then it'll be time to put it in the oven. So as you can tell, I have run out of flour, and this does happen when you are breading things. I kind of wondered about their numbers on the breading portion, just because it does take a lot of flour to bread chicken. So I almost made a little bit more, but I didn't want to over make my breading portion because it can't be used again. And I didn't want to have a whole lot of leftover to waste. So what we're going to do is we're going to add just a little bit more flour and a little bit of our seasonings and make another batch of a breading station, because we have we have 2 more chicken tenders to go, and this one needs another dip. So I'll probably just eyeball the flour and we'll finish up this recipe. Okay, so I've got my flour back out, and I'm literally just going to shake in some flour. That's probably roughly about a half to a 3/4 of a cup more of flour, probably more on the half end. And then grab some paprika, and I'm literally just going to kind of eyeball these amounts. Just give a little bit of a shake of the paprika. My spices from the Spice Merchant, I will go ahead and use a measuring spoon of some sort, just so that I am not touching raw spice. Here's just a little bit of the sriracha chili powder. And I will give you my thoughts on amounts and quantities for updates for this recipe at the end of this video. So now I'm going to add in a little bit more of the habanero powder. Not too much. And then we will add in a little bit more of the crushed pepper. Since I am working with raw chicken, I am using a Clorox wipe, and I am immediately wiping down the surface area where I was cooking. We do not want any type of salmonella or any other raw poultry related sickness going on. So right around in here, inside of my burner here where a little piece fell. Get that all cleaned up. All right. Got it. Okay, so here is what we have. So the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to look at our recipe, because the recipe gives me instructions for a deep fryer, pan frying it in oil in a skillet. And then we have an air fryer recipe, and it says to preheat the air fryer to 400 degrees. So we are going to use that timing for our oven. So hear that click? That's my oven turning on, and it is preheating to 400 degrees. Okay, so the chicken is in the oven, and it is about 3 o'clock, and I'm going to let the chicken go for about 35 to 40 minutes, and then I'm going to check it. Since we're doing it in the oven based on frying it, it will take a little bit longer to bake, but it also makes it a healthier meal dish. So we'll see you back in about 30 to 40 minutes. Okay, so it's 45 minutes later, and the chicken is out of the oven, and I have to say, I think it turned out amazing. Now, one thing to note is that when you bake chicken like this, you may end up with a little bit of like a floury residue that you don't get when you fry it. Very, very hot. Okay, this is really good. I will say that next time I do this, I probably will only bread it once. Breading it twice makes it look just a little bit crunchier than I think I prefer. But the breading turned out really good. I'm really happy with it. And you can taste the heat in it, but it's not overwhelming. But it's a little bit spicier than the typical Popeyes chicken, and that makes me happy. Definitely a win. So there you go. That was 9 total ingredients off of 2 lists, and dinner is served. I hope that you enjoyed this video. Make sure to check out all of the other channels who have participated. I can't wait to see what they make, and I can't wait to find some new recipes to try with ingredients that we've just all got in our pantry. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you later. Bye!